what is the story? How am I telling it like an empathetic, relatable story that not is more than just like watching a great movie and you go on and live your life, but it impacts you and you take it away and you're thinking about it after and you just cannot get it out of your head. It's like an earworm. So I really love how you like PR campaign it is. It's sales and marketing.
We do have the fireside panel. Why we call it a fireside panel, I'm not sure, but it is. So as a reminder to everyone here, please submit questions in the chat or in the Q&A for our panel of experts. So I'd like to welcome back Jean. Also, I'd like to introduce you to Andrea Lagan, the Chief Operating Officer of BetterWorks. Some of you may have seen her yesterday. And then also Andrea Illés, Head of People Experience at Nokia. I'm laughing because I never know who's an Andrea and who's an Andrea. So,
I'm Andrea.
So welcome. Let's start with an introduction from Andrea Illés and maybe a bit of background for the audience.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Amy. Can you hear me this time? Because I had a bit of a challenge in the morning presenting with the audio.
Is it Andrea or Andrea?
It's Andrea.
Easy.
Yeah. I'm not sure what's the difference, to be honest. I think it's the pronunciation, but each country would pronounce it differently, I believe. So I'm working for Nokia as the head of people experience. You probably know Nokia from the very old times as well already, like, being a mobile phone provider. But nowadays it's really B2B. And it's a technology company which is, heavily focusing on innovation and trying to solve some of the very pressing issues of the world, like responding to climate change, improving technology, making sure that everyone is having access to technology, to healthcare, to education, and trying to improve these opportunities. So being the head of people experience of Europe, I'm responsible for a workforce of 40,000 people, because Nokia has 87,000 people across the globe. And our responsibility is really about enhancing the employee experience, and also enhancing the or helping also to add value to the business at the same time, I would say.
Great. Thank you for that introduction. And then we also introduce Andrea Lagan. Andrea, I know many of the audience may have seen you yesterday, but definitely welcome a brief introduction.
Sure. It's great to be here again. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. And I'm Andrea Lagan, as Amy said, and I think, the pronunciation of the name kind of depends on where you're from in the world and the accent you have. And, I don't know, I kind of feel like I'm not that picky about it. It sounds like you're the same, Andrea, or Andrea. I am the COO at BetterWorks. I've been with BetterWorks since January of 2020. I have responsibility for both the customer success side of the business as well as the employee success side of the business. So that's, everything to do with supporting how our customers use our technology, the services that we deliver in support of the technology, and then everything related to HR for BetterWorks, including using our own product. And the thing that I really love, and I said this yesterday, I love about what I get to do every day is that, I get to see how our product enables and really empowers people through the work that they do and the technology that they use every day across the globe. And I think it really has a great opportunity to make a difference in the world. And I love that. So happy to be here.
Thank you. So let's start with a question around the line manager role. So we just heard Jean discuss the critical role that they play in employee experience. So I'd love to hear, firstly, perhaps to Andrea at Nokia, how have you equipped your line managers with knowledge and tools throughout their people manager journey? And also, second question to that, how have you noticed the impact that that has had on their direct reports?
All right. So I think there are, oh gosh, this is such a huge topic. I think I could talk about this the whole day probably. And I guess many of us would do the same. In the morning, I was delivering a presentation about our cultural transformation, where we are introduced a new culture to Nokia, being open, fearless, and empowered. And we actually are putting a lot of emphasis on line manager empowerment. We are trying to equip them with all of the knowledge they need and try to have less of a hand-holding, I would say, during their journey. Although at the same time, we also need to appreciate that there are times when we will still need to reach out and still need to, or they will need to reach out and they will still have our support on the ground or virtually for them. But one of the things which we were doing was, very recently, we actually revamped our onboarding for first-time line managers. We did build a very, very comprehensive course about not only the technical knowledge, but also the soft skills, building it around this open, fearless, and empowered culture and the culture journey. But also at the same time, we are running very good coaching programs, for example, for the line managers. So we are trying to teach them to be coaches as well for the employees. We are just reflecting on Jean's presentation. We are also trying to equip them, for example, to spot if there is any mental health issue in their teams. There is a lot of pressure on them, I understand, because there are so many increasing needs are going towards their way. But I think if we are able to provide them with the right knowledge base, if we are able to provide them with the right information upfront, then it's going to be much, much easier for them on their journey. And just as a reflection for the measurement, we are running pulse surveys on a regular basis. This is one of them is about, measuring the cultural changes we were able to achieve, which is very important because immediately if we get the results, then we can have sessions with the line managers for them to understand and analyze the results and maybe responding to that change. We also, run annual Nokia heartbeat surveys, meaning that this is a more overall survey where we are also measuring the mental health, the growth opportunities, and all the other aspects of the work for all of the employees. And again, the line managers are getting help via the change champions, via other resources during or across the organization to help them to process this information. And this is quite important because without being able to measure it on a regular way, you wouldn't have the right feedback.
Great, thank you. So many important initiatives there, and I think we could have listened to you all day as well. So we'll look forward to more insights. Andrea from BetterWorks, which is how I'm going to differentiate today. How would you recommend equipping line managers with the knowledge and tools through their people manager journey to really empower them to drive the performance management process?
Yeah. I think one of the things that was an area that many doubled down on, and I mentioned this a little bit yesterday, when you think about, back to March of 2020, when everybody went shelter in place, everybody was home. There was even, there was very little concept of anything hybrid for a period of time, and everybody had to react to, okay, how do we keep the business moving? How do we keep our employees feeling like, they're excited to get up and come to work every day with everything, all the stresses that were going on. The most powerful thing that we saw with our customers and frankly internally at BetterWorks too was the ability to have very structured conversations between employees and managers, and the idea of creating a structured approach, creating an equitable approach to how you're connecting with your employees, the types of conversations you're having with them, from the day-to-day, like anytime conversations that you might have with your employee around, okay, how are you progressing on your goals? Is there anything that we might need to review or reprioritize? What difficulties are you having? How is your work-life integration? How are the things that you need to do for work, and how are the things that you need to do for home, coming together? And I think, Jean, you had that one slide that, and this is such a valuable point, of managers really understanding how to strike that right balance of not being under involved, but also not being over involved. Like there is the fine line between, crossing the boundaries of the types of things you want to talk about with your employees. The other thing that was really important during this time and continues to be important, and I think was emphasized over the course of the last couple of years, is what are the types of career conversations that managers should be having with their employees, and how do they glean information from their employees about what their career aspirations are in a way that helps the manager develop the employee. What are some of the development conversations that managers should be having with employees relative to the role that they play in the company? And, there's a level of engagement that comes from that. There's a level of empowerment because you're engaging regularly with your employees on what they need to be focused on and helping them get there. And from an analytics perspective, you're doing things very equitably because you're having the same types of conversations with everybody on your team, regardless of where they are, regardless of what time zone they're in, regardless of the role that they play. And you can gather a lot of both structured and unstructured data with which you can then, make even better decisions on. So, I think the conversation, the consistency in the conversation, the level of development, feedback and development that can come from those conversations, those are pretty powerful for managers to really be effective in their role.
Wow, some great advice there. Obviously, this is a change management journey for a lot of organizations out there who haven't been through this process yet. So one of the questions that came in was, how can you get started in trying to get buy-in from leadership to implement a company-wide employee experience mission, but also just to reimagine the way things are working today? Toppy, perhaps you can start us with that one.
Oops. I really like that question because I think I wouldn't even say that I'm an expert. Maybe I've tried some things that have worked, and I've also tried some things that really haven't worked. And what I recognize is that, like, people are people. It's like, how do you get somebody to buy into an idea? Maybe if where you want to go for dinner, or where you want to go for a holiday, or what you want to watch on TV. You kind of got to understand, like, what's their pull, what's the sell for that individual. Because everybody has a million things to do at one time. No one really has time. Everybody's resources feel stretched. Nobody feels like they're just sat with this abundance of time to do anything. So really what I'm learning and what I've experienced is finding the sell, finding the pull, finding the motivation, and how it can kind of like link to the objective of another team, and knowing what to win, like what battles do I want to go for. And I'm very certain about that. And also knowing, we call it like dehydrate this idea. So it's not kill the idea, it's just dehydrate and put it on the shelf. And maybe later we'll add a bit of water and start again. So sometimes a no isn't like never, it's just a not now. And I can think of a series of different projects where I thought this is like perfect time. We should really be doing this. But actually in the wider business context, there's other things that are more pressing. And I have to also accept, I wouldn't call it like conceding, but understanding it's like this journey that I'm part of. And I don't always win the battle, but sometimes I will if I can find the pull for the person.
Yeah, it's also a balancing kind of gut instinct on those things that you know need to happen, but also, as you said earlier, having the data to back those things up as well. Jean, I saw you come off mute. Did you have something to contribute to that?
I knew you were going to ask me the same question. Well, maybe just to share, I wanted to piggyback on an important point that Toby mentioned a while ago. And I think, the challenge we have in terms of like employee experience and engagement is it's so hard to quantify. Like specifically, this is the impact that we have, right? This has always been a challenge. And in fact, for example, our team is relatively new. We were only established in 2019 in PMI. But one thing I would say is that in PMI, for example, one of the key strategies we have in people and culture is sustaining high levels of employee engagement. So I think that makes for a good anchor or starting point. And then from there, I think it would be good to really identify what are the focus areas and the key outcomes we wish to achieve, where we could really add value to that specific strategy that we have, right? So just to give you an example, this topic is very relevant for us because in the recent years, we've been having some changes to our performance management. And EX was one of the key contributors in terms of really making sure that we are able to identify what are the pain points. And it's not just like the same pain point across a 70,000 strong organization, but it would be different pain points at different levels, at different regions, and so on, right? So I think we should be able to find where we could really add value, and obviously having that strategic linkage is always going to be to our advantage or would be a big plus.
Yeah, I agree with that. Making sure that the pain isn't just isolated with you, which I'm sure by the time you come up with the idea, it isn't, but making sure that that pain is felt in different parts of the organization as well. Andrea at Nokia, how have you experienced this when trying to get buy-in from leadership?
I think we were, in a way, in a very lucky situation because in 2020 we had a new CEO joining us who was, very ready to jump in and trying to transform the business. And there was also an expectation very high up to the board, to do the change. And what we thought was a very powerful tool, and what they were doing was actually surveying. The CEO survey was sent out to the whole Nokia population, and more than 60% of the employees responded to that. So I didn't really feel that we needed to do a lot of selling this time, but because there was already a view and the need to change. So even before Pekka Lundmark joined the Nokia, he already knew that this is something which he would like to, get through. And having a CEO backing you up is actually something which is really making a huge difference. But we were still facing challenges because, to be able to do that, we also, it's not only enough to transform the top leaders' view, but you also need to understand the needs and the challenges of the middle managers. You also need to understand, what kind of issues they are facing. So it was great to have it top down, but we also needed to do something more bottom up, and we needed to involve and to ask employees to co-create many of the initiatives. So we were co-creating the cultural aspects, the values, the essentials which Nokia stand for example, together with the employees. Line managers were empowered to they had very high level guidelines of how to set up their departments. But I, for example, was myself empowered to reach out to my team and co-create with them how we would like to deliver the employee experience to our Europe population. So of course we had these guidelines, but to be able to embed it into the culture, we really need to first give this empowerment, this opportunity to the line managers to be able to practice it and equip them with the knowledge as well. And then if it happens, then they can also, channel it down to the employees. Yeah. And then the employees also need to kind of be open enough to be able to take up these challenges. So there is quite a lot of unlearning and learning to be done. So I would never say it's an easy journey, but you need to have a starting point somewhere. I absolutely agree. We need to, convince senior management if there is a need for that. We need to find the sweet spots, how to convince someone. It's good to speak the language of the business with analytics, with data, with, attrition rates, performance, and so on, just to ensure that they understand why is it so important to make this transformation.
And Amy, may I just jump in? Andrea from Nokia, I love what you have said is some things need to come top down, especially when it comes to like uncomfortable change. Because if you think of someone taking a different route to get to work, you've got like the automatic route that and typically the only way somebody will take a different route, even if it is quicker, is if there's like something that literally stops them from doing the old one. So there's some kind of roadworks or something. People just like what's convenient, even if it's quicker and easier. And you said something which is like so important. I mean, you guys are so lucky you had a new CEO who was ready for change, because as soon as you have someone at the top pushing down and saying, no, we are doing this, this is important. As I mentioned earlier, everyone has all of these different competing objectives, competing priorities, conflicts, things that overlap. Like once you have someone focused and saying, actually, this out of the 20,000 things you have to do, I want this to be number 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. It makes things so easier. And I think one of the questions earlier was around like, how do you convince? That's like, for me, the shortcut to convincing people. If someone at the top says it's a shortcut, you don't have to convince anymore.
True. That's so true.
Definitely helps, that's for sure. Andrea at BetterWorks, what's your advice on getting this buy-in?
Yeah, as everyone was talking, I'm like, gosh, all of you, we could like be side by side talking about, what the most critical success factors are in driving change in an organization. And it really does start with executive sponsorship. And, I actually think it goes beyond just the sponsorship. You've got to have ongoing support, executive support. So, walking the talk of the change that you want to drive. And Andrea, you said, something about really embedding it into, what happens every day. When you think about the champion network that you're building across your organization, whether that's managers, whether that's individual contributors, whether that's different functional leaders, having a group of people across the organization that serve as kind of your change network of champions, and using those champions to help embed the change that you're trying to drive across all of the processes or the things that happen in your organization, whether that's like team meetings, all hands meetings, performance discussions, have kind of structured communication plans and templates that you might, roll out over time. Think about it as like a PR campaign almost. The training comment, having kind of role-based training in place with best practices that support what you want to drive over the organization, and incorporation of all of that into your standard processes and even policies where it makes sense. Like you have to think about all of the nuances that are going to ensure the change across the organization. starting with that executive sponsorship and that executive support.
Amy, do you mind if I just jump in?
The better team.
Yeah. Andrea, I literally love how you have said it is like a PR campaign. It is. It's like sales and marketing. I remember when I was in university, I used to, and for some reason, this story I've told so many times in the last week, I used to have to sell credit cards. And I actually hated it so much because it was like cold calling in the UK. You'd have to call someone at like 6 p.m. after work. They want to maybe feed their family or just relax. And you're trying to convince them to buy a credit card. But what it taught me is like everything is a sell. Like if it's not important to the person, even if I was saying, oh, you know, this new spa, I really want you to try it, like something fun like that. It is a sell. Like it's a PR campaign. It's not just enough to have the data to say, this is a good idea. We should do this. But actually, like, what is the story? How am I telling like an empathetic, relatable story that not is more than just like watching a great movie and you go on and live your life, but it impacts you and you take it away and you're thinking about it after and you just cannot get it out of your head. It's like an earworm. So I really love how you like PR campaign it is. It's sales and marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I may, I so agree with this. And actually, when we were doing our cultural transformation, we worked so much together with the corporate comms team. It was just essential, you know, to design all the communication, to ask them to help with everything which we were doing. They designed SharePoints, podcasts. You know, it was a huge effort from their side to make this change happen. And then when we were, you know, empowering the line managers, we also give them guidelines on how to empower the employees to share their stories. Because I think one thing is which I mentioned, that it is coming from the top, but on the other hand, we also need to kind of share for the employees that how each and every individual is making a difference and how these individuals are living the essentials. So, for example, in the People Experience Europe team, we are going to now introduce, you know, an award about living the essentials. You know, how you live up to the culture, what kind of, it's a very small award, but still it's very, you know, important to recognize the right behavior of people, line manager, employees, or whoever is going to do the right behavior.
And this actually nicely links to one of the questions that you may have for us, Amy, wherein you ask, like, how would we drive engagement from employees, from managers, from leadership? And I think one key message we want to also send across is it's not just a top-down approach. We don't just wait for the leaders. We don't just wait for the managers. I was recently talking to one of my colleagues, and it's interesting how he framed it. Like he said, employees should start to realize, especially when we talk about the pulse survey, there are a lot of expectations on the shoulders of their line managers, right? But employees should also come to realize that it's not just, oh, I'm going to be on the receiving end and wait. They have to realize that they also have a hand in that. So, for example, when we talk about well-being, we typically ask employees, it's not just what do you expect from leaders or what do you expect from the organization, but we also ask them that how are you personally making sure that you're looking after your well-being? Because it's not all just, I'm going to wait for the company to do something, or I'm going to wait for my line manager to do something about it. Internally, the employee should also realize that.
And thank you for queuing up the next question, Jean. We just have a couple minutes left, so I'd like to finish with just one piece of advice from all of you that you can give to a HR leader and team that recognizes that their current processes aren't quite working. So just one piece of advice based on your experience on really how to transform or how to improve. And then I think that'll be the fireside chat conversation complete. Perhaps we start with Toppy.
Sure thing. And I give this advice to whenever anybody asks me in any context, what's the one bit of advice? I say the same thing because I have to remind myself of this, but it is to extend grace to like yourself and to other people, because Nobody knows. No one has a clue. We're all just trying to figure it out, and everyone is trying to be the best with the best that they have at the time, the best information you have accessible to you at the time. And if you can remember that, I feel like everything else just feels right. It actually helps to create a really nice environment where you feel like psychologically safe. So in summary, extend grace to yourself and to others.
I love that advice. I'm gonna definitely bring that with me for the rest of the day and the week. Jean, what about you?
So one of the key themes that I've heard recurring today from the previous sharings that I got to sit into is, the concept behind, or when we say employee experience, it's hard to grasp, right? It's not tangible like water or like food. So when we say employee experience, it's an employee centricity. It's really putting employees at the center of what we do. So I think this is a key concept with whatever transformation, let's say, an organization is going through. But at the same time, I wanted to also chime in and share that, at the end of the day, it's always finding that balance or that sweet spot. It cannot be purely customer centric. You also need to find business value in terms of what you do. So if you're able to find that sweet spot, that should be a good formula for success.
Thank you, Jean. Andrea at Betterworks, what about your advice?
I actually wrote about this on Monday on a blog post, but I think the most important thing is to strategically partner with leaders across the organization and really understand what the pain points are, and where the pain for them is most acute in terms of their functional team's success and the company's success. It also, I think, drives a huge amount of empathy, Tope, like you're talking about, and the ability to understand the business challenges, extend a little grace, be empathetic for the types of things that are happening in the organization, so that you aren't kind of pigeonholed as an HR leader into only the compliance stuff. Like there's so much strategic value that HR brings to an organization through how they partner with and uncover and solve for the biggest problems that the business faces. And, I think, Jean, your comment about keeping people at the center, at the end of the day, your people have to be successful so that your customers can be successful. And so, that's always paramount. So I guess that's my top. I don't know how many did list off there, 2, 3. My top.
The more the better, really. And then finally, Andrea at Nokia, what would be your advice?
I would like to join into Andrea's view, because this is something which I was thinking about. So I think partnering with the strategic leaders is quite essential, but I would also add, ask your people, ask your customers what they would like to see from you, and try to co-create with them. Because one thing which I always said to my team when I started to take on this leadership role is that I cannot be clever and successful on my own only. I mean, I really need a diverse perspective. I need people around me who are, helping to create all the right experience for our employees. And I think this is so important, that we are also asking them, and we are asking their advice, their pain points, what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing, and how to go forward. So when you are starting to design a new employee experience from scratch, which I have seen as one of the questions in the Q&A, then I would suggest to reach out to as many people as possible to try to understand their perspective first.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you to you all. I'll finish with something that Agnieszka actually put in the chat. Thank you all speakers for emphasizing that active listening and talking to people is essential. So I love that. And that came from Agnieszka, who's one of the attendees today. that was such a great conversation. It's always good when everyone wants to jump in and contribute. So yeah, I think we could keep going, and we filled that 20 minutes easily. So thank you, all of you. And yeah, we'll hope to see you again soon.